I nominate Eric.
Suggestions? All right, we'll have to do a roll call as well.
Come on, Sam. I'll nominate,
Now
we gotta do the roll call.
now's your chance to.
I'll just screw it.
That's Sylvia's talking to you.
Yes, I do.
I'm talking to all of you.
Okay.
Should I go ahead and do roll call?
Yeah.
All right. So we're doing roll call. Nick Mission is absent. Eric Dowd,
Here.
Eric Seacrest,
See him
Here.
John Williams,
Here.
Jess Pedersen,
here.
Heather McDonald,
Here.
Kim McGee.
Here.
And since the chair is absent, you'll need to appoint a temporary chair.
So if anybody would like to nominate somebody,
Eric. Dowd, Eric Dowd.
hear a nomination.
Second.
Are there any other nominations? Go for it. Okay. We don't vote.
You guys can vote. Why not?
Yes.
The next thing on the agenda is consent calendar. Consent the agenda.
So that is the approval of the June 1st, 2023 meeting minutes. So if you guys have reviewed those and anybody would like to make a motion to approve them.
Has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes? June 1st, 2023.
And it's from June 1st.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it passes unanimously. Now we want to, before we get too far into it, I want to add a item to the agenda, if that's possible.
Okay. What would you like to add?
I would like to just add a discussion of the Forest Service properties and potential of relocating one of the buildings.
Okay, where would you like to add that on the agenda?
We can add that. Where would you recommend? How about, since we have people in the audience, maybe right after our item number 4?
We could do that.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they're here to talk about that.
Yeah. Is there any objections to the addition to the agenda? Do we have to vote on that?
Nope.
Okay. So we've modified the agenda. The next thing is number 4, persons present not on the agenda, and we have an opportunity for them to speak. I see 2 people in the audience, and there isn't anyone else on Zoom, so if you'd come forward and state your name and address.
I'm Meredith Bullock, 682 Euclid. I have a statement from my neighbors, Dick and Rita Marsh at 694 Euclid, but I have a question first of Eric. Rita mentioned engineer's office. What is that?
This is part of the discussion. There's 3 buildings that are slated to be torn down. One is on Year 3. The old residence, another office building on Year 3. And the third building is the stable, which is the interior of the property.
But so the engineers wasn't part of this photo
I'm not sure.
because that's not on, well, if it's on Main Street, it's not.
Sorry.
Oh,
The small building.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so speaking of the demolition of the Forest Service buildings, Dick and Rita say, we support the idea of preserving historic buildings from the current USFS site, the stables, and the engineer's office. Finding an appropriate site to move these buildings to will be an asset in preserving a significant part of Carbondale's history. I edited that for clarity. But also, Dan and I would like to see the stables building preserved. Nope, I don't have a picture of that. And I think another place that they could go into Sopris Park, as Eric has suggested to us. It could also go to the jail, the Historic Society's corner where the jail is. I don't know how it would fit there, or possibly Thompson House. I don't know if there's room on the Thompson House property to put it.
So,
I'm gonna just finish and then I'll tell you.
yeah, so this is for comments only, and I just want to hold off on having any back and forth dialogue until we can bring up the conversation. So if you wouldn't mind
Okay,
holding, we can circle back and get into a little bit more of a dialogue.
okay, that's fine.
Dan, did you have anything that you wanted to?
No, I'll elaborate later.
Gotcha. Okay. So Eric, you brought this up on the agenda. Is there something that you wanted to?
Yes. So I was disappointed that that the letter to the trustees was just kind of dropped, and wasn't even on the agenda for this meeting. I still feel strongly that we, as a commission, should at least write a letter to our trustees about the potential of moving one of the buildings or two to town property. And I feel that not only is the stable building valuable in terms of its architectural integrity, but I think more important is its cultural value, in that once that building is gone, people will have no idea that Sopris Park was really a pasture for the Forest Service. And I think if that building were able to be moved to the park, it would retain its kind of authentic connection to that historical use. And I don't know of any other town that can claim that kind of unique quality that we're subject to just raising and taking to the dump. It's our purview as the Historic Commission to save our cultural heritage. This isn't for us. This is for the next generation and the generation after that. And the longer these elements can be preserved, the more valuable they become. So that's my little impassioned speech. John and I did take the time today to walk the park and look at possible locations in the park. I've got a handout to give. I think the park is again more appropriate because of the historical connection. And John will point out the properties, the Thompson House and Heritage Park are small, and the building would probably not fit, it would not be a good fit. I think if it were moved to Sopris Park, it could not only save the building, but it actually become a public benefit. The two places we have located, let me just hand that out. There's one for you and one for you and one for you. You might have to pass that on to those guys. Let me keep one. There's two, I think, probable locations. I'm showing alternate A and alternate B. Both have real use capability. Alternate A would augment the Potato Days events and provide shelter for the barbecue, as well as it could become beer sales or other kinds of venue for mountain fair. Alternate B, because of its further location away from the town pavilion, the stage, I was thinking the town currently does not have, I think, a small meeting space. The library has a meeting space, but we use this room for meetings, but for small gatherings and events for, say, our meditation groups. I'm in a men's group. Other facilities. This building could really function as a real valuable community asset. And we don't have it in our budget. The budget's a problem, but the benefit of moving it to Sopris Park is we don't have to cross any public streets. There's no electrical lines or other utilities to get in the way of that move. So the move is simple, and it could be placed temporarily on the ground, secured, so that it could be not be vandalized, and allow opportunity for fundraising. The construction costs in renting it would be fairly minimal, a slab, and depending on if you wanted to heat it, it could remain unheated until there was such time as we could condition the space. So anyway, that alternate A is on Euclid Avenue. Being on Euclid Avenue, it also provides some barrier between activities, major activities in the park and the residences that are across the street. Alternate B, which is on the corner of Went and the park, really provides closer connection to downtown, and it could become maybe the Chamber of Commerce. It could have a small visitor center that was sometimes staffed. There's a lot of opportunity there, and so I think the building not only has its past value, but I think if it were part of our public domain, could be a really valuable asset. Yeah.
So, back in 2019, I think it was, maybe 2018, I was with the Historical Preservation. Oh, sorry. I was with a historical, the Carbondale Historical Society, and we were very interested in moving the stable building. And so me and another one, Amy, Fullstone went over, and measured it. It's 26 by 30, 34.5 feet. The footprint is. And we had discussed putting it over behind at the Thompson House Museum, behind the bathroom to the south side of the bathroom. That's kind of right there at the permaculture garden area. And it would have worked out really well. They could have used half the building, and the Historical Society could use half the building for storage. But getting it there is practically impossible. I went and drove it the other day. It's 3/4 of a mile. There's 3 different sets of electrical wires we'd have to move or raise or do something with to get it downwind to the highway. And then from the highway, you could take 1 or 2 ways. You could go by the Montessori school and in around there. However, the roads are like 22 feet and the building's 26 feet. And so it's like, I'm not sure it's gonna even fit. And then turning the corner at the front of the house, it would really be impossible. And now that they built those townhomes over there, it'd be really hard to get it in there. Going the other way down the highway and then turning right at the light, you have the traffic light bar across there that doesn't really move at all. We'd have to deal with that. And then the turning to the right again, just past the tennis courts and then into the park, that 22 feet as well. And there's signs on both sides and it's just you can't get it in there. We also looked over at the jail and the cabin history park over there, and it just doesn't fit. The only place we'd be able to do it would be to the north side of the cabin, and it would wipe out that entire green grassy area. Parks and Rec didn't really like that idea either. So keeping it in Soper's Park is really the only feasible place to be able to move it to. We looked at putting it more or less right on where the Potato Day hole is dug to cook the meat, and basically we'd have to take that out, put the stable there, and then dig the hole and do the meat someplace else. Alternative B on Eric's map is, to me, the most logical spot would be just across the fence inside the park, kind of the flagpole corner. We would only lose 1 tree there, a pretty young tree. We'd have to get that replaced someplace. But like Eric said, the Chamber of Commerce may be interested in having something there. The chamber always does something at the mountain fair, and they set up their own booth and stuff. I'm pretty sure they would like to have some sort of permanent setting for them to be able to move out of 3rd Street Center. I can't speak for them at all, but they would definitely be someone to get in touch with to see what they say about that. So that's moving it to those other 2 parks that you were saying pretty much out of question. Too bad we tried then. I'm trying again now. It would be nice to be able to save that building. This is definitely not the last you're going to hear about from me from Forest Service wiping out that entire town. Our Christmas tree slayers, I think they can readjust their plans and put the building in the very back corner of the place up against the swimming pool. They would dig a great big deep hole for their foundation, put the parking like they want, put the signs out in front, leave the trees there and do everything they want. I think cutting down the part of the downtown forest is a very unforesty kind of thing for the Forest Service to do. So, there you have it. That's not the last you'll hear from me.
Did you guys consider some of the properties that were recently donated to the town?
Those are private, the ones donated to the town, no.
This
No,
lot over here and this section over by the theater?
Maybe we should ask our town planner.
So there's a lot to unpack here. So I'm gonna take us back a ways. Eric, your first comment about disappointment with this agenda or this item not being on the agenda. I believe, and I don't want to speak for Kelly, but I will try to summarize her comments, but she did talk with Nick about that, and he wanted to be present for this conversation. So he requested, since he wasn't able to be here tonight, to move this conversation topic to the next meeting so that he could be a part of it. And so that's why this topic is not on tonight's agenda. Without getting too much into it, and I know you guys are all aware, the Forest Service, in the great adage of size of animals in the sea, the Forest Service and the federal government is the bigger fish in the sea than us. And so we have zero authority over the Forest Service. This commission, as an advisory commission to the Board of Trustees, can certainly prepare a letter to the trustees, and then the trustees can do what they want with that. And so if you guys want to prepare a letter, that's certainly fine. I think it's worth being realistic and considerate about what the impacts of potentially moving this structure are and where reasonable locations are. I think John brought up some great points. My concern with even considering the Thompson House as a location is it is the town's only National Register location, and doing anything that could potentially jeopardize that would seem to fly in the face of the mission of this board. And so I don't think that is something that really should be considered. I think that property really needs to stay as it is. And the town and the Historical Society and this commission could look at ways to properly maintain that structure so it doesn't lose its significance. I think John really already addressed the Heritage Park. There just isn't enough space for a building this big. I also believe this topic was brought up at a recent Park and Rec meeting, and other park locations were considered, and others were basically said not really feasible. So really what it comes down to is Soper's Park or not Soper's Park. When talking to the town's rec director, it seemed like Soper's Park, with its current programming and envisioned future programming, didn't really seem to have a viable location for this structure to be put there. It seemed like it would get in the way of a lot of the use of the park as it's currently used and envisioned. I'm just relaying stuff, but I think that's something that needs to be fleshed out a bit more with the Park and Rec Commission. I think John's comment of putting this where the Potato Days pit is dug, only to go dig in a different location, maybe doesn't seem like the most prudent use of space. And so
That was not this intention.
and
Potato pit is right next to the building there.
Gotcha. And alternate B seems to be one of the primary Mountain Fair access points.
Mhm.
So, something worth considering, but I think that's something that if there's any further movement on this, the Park and Rec Commission needs to weigh in on. I don't envision the Forest Service providing any funding to assist with relocating this building. If it works with their timeline, I could see a scenario where the Forest Service allows the town to relocate it. But that would be up to the town. I think as far as future uses of the space, I would be very hesitant to offer it up to a third party to use it. I think the chamber, I don't know if moving out of a modern facility into a historic facility is necessarily something that they would want to pursue. But, I think if the town were to relocate this building, ensuring that the use is something within the town's control is probably the best course of action. I think getting the third party in there is going to muddy the waters. It's going to open up a lot of liability. It's going to open up a lot of doors for unintentional damage, which is ultimately going to cost the town. If the town's saving it, it's going to cost the town with maintaining and keeping the property in its historic nature. So those are kind of my thoughts. Jess, remind me of your question again.
The consideration of any of the land that was recently donated.
So I don't think there was really any consideration of those. I don't think the town center land is going to be considered. I think the town has a higher and better use for that. To create a extension of the historic commercial core with a mixed use building. I think putting a single use building in there would eat up a lot of functional space there. And I think the town's need for additional commercial and residential space probably outweighs putting that in that space. I don't think other sites were considered, but it's worth kicking the can on those, I guess, for lack of better terms, and seeing if there isn't another property that could be viable. Yeah. So those are kind of some of my initial thoughts. I did read the letter that was prepared. And, again, I think my only comments and something I've talked about with Kelly would be to make sure that the relocation and the reuse of those are realistic. I would hate to see this commission recommend something and then the town pursues those uses and those locations and just says no to each one of those, and then says, well, the request isn't reasonable or viable or whatever that might be. And so yeah, I don't know the town, or I don't know the Forest Service's timeline on actually starting construction. But it's something that if you guys want to forward a letter, I would say in the next meeting or so would probably be a reasonable time frame.
Just to add what you're saying, when I talked to him in 2019, talked to Kevin, who's the main guy over there. He said, take the building, get it out of here. You're going to save us money. Take as many as you want.
Yeah, they would love to not have to demo and deal with.
Exactly. So that's not really any problem. They're not going to chip in any money to help us, but, so,
What we would ask for though is the amount of money that it would take for them to demolish the building. We could ask for that.
oh, well,
I would recommend against that.
yeah.
Federal funds do not come without strings, no matter how those funds are disseminated. There's always some sort of string, and I think the hassle of getting the federal government to give us money to do even a portion of that isn't worth the headache it's going to be to process it and document it and deal with Davis-Bacon wages on who we hire to relocate it and Buy America requirements, because they're going to require all of those things. And so I don't think that would be the best use of the town's time.
I do think in the past, John Leyburn has put ads in the paper on some of these older structures to relocate. That might be a course of action.
So I think we should table this until next month, when next year, and continue the discussion. We can come up with more answers, what we discussed. I think Dan,
Yeah, so, is there anyone in the audience that want to speak?
Hi, my name's Dan Bullock, 682 Euclid. Actually, I think could be another possible solution for this. We have two cookie cutter projects that are right next door to each other: the swimming pool and the Forest Service. Unimaginative beyond belief. One building on that property is a metal shed. In the past, the Board of Trustees said, we will never build another metal shed in this town. I mean, this was years ago, and it followed after the Construction Junction building on that. My idea is to tell the Forest Service, tear down the metal shed, move the stable on that spot, and reuse it. The other thing is the swimming pool, to use that building as part of their building. Whether it go up on Main Street and be their main entrance into the whole project or whatever. But those are my two thoughts on that. So that's really, I think, are possibly some ideas that kind of keep it close to where it is and not getting out of that spot and looking to really move it into Cypress Park in the spot. They're already going to be building a building for the swimming pool, and they already have a building that they could replace and actually have a better looking project overall. That's my comment.
You sure?
I think my house.
You can sit here at these ones too. We just need to get it on the microphone for the
Oh,
people,
there is? Oh, good.
the people watching on TV.
I think when our house was moved from Glenwood Springs, I think they cut it in half. Do you think, you know, where the hole is in the floor and the jacks were that? I don't know. But the Thomas House Movers moved it in 1978 on a flatbed, and they had to lift all the wires off of Highway 82 all the way from Glenwood to Carbondale to move that house.
We moved the depot that was in the Rancho Roaring Fork to our ranch up in Cottonwood Pass. That was in 2 sections as well.
so anyway, I made a motion to table this until next month.
I didn't hear a second. We will officially move to the next item on the agenda. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's great to have it all.
All right. This is just really short. the staff memo pretty much says it all. I've been working on the Clio walking tours. Much thanks to Kim for all of her hard work on that. We did find that her audio files were on each of all but like 7 of the pages. They were just in a different location. They weren't right at the top. So they were down if you had to kind of scroll past the picture of the building and they were there. So I did request that those other 7 properties, the audio files be added. Honestly, I totally spaced looking to see if it's been done yet. But I will check on that. And then we were able to reorder while keeping the primary, the architecture tour in its entirety. Then I was able to segment it as John and Kim had envisioned with the 3 different areas. I think there were actually only 2 residential, but then we thought it made more sense to do something north of Main Street and then something around Sopris Park. So that's been done. The one thing that I did notice is that the clarity of some of the photos on the Clio, I think because thumbnails were uploaded, they're very fuzzy. So more recent photos would help in 2 ways. It would give us an inventory of what the buildings look like now compared to when they were surveyed, which the first survey we're coming up on 20 years in just a couple years. So that would give us a sense of whether a lot of changes have been made. And then it would also just improve the visuals of the tour itself. So that would be a project if one of the
good news is Heather took good photos of those homes, and they're the photos that we've used for the plaques. So we have them.
For
I
all,
think we don't have all of them,
We
but
may
we
not
have
have
the ones that were for the structure of merit that had a plaque.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Go around and take pictures of every single one on the list.
so, I mean, if you just want to do that and forward them to me as you do it, I can add those. And then we would like to develop the historic commercial core walking tour. I'm happy to put some time into it. But some of the, verbiage and everything
seen
would
the-
be.
tour that exists. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Um,
That's written. There's a whole brochure with a tour of
2.
two of HCC.
oh yeah, just like the walking tour.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So you've seen that.
Yeah, I can use that as bones. The nice thing about this tour is that you can augment the information. So, like you can have a backstory of up to and context of 5 to 6 paragraphs. And then you have the introductory paragraph, which should really kind of be like, this is the building architecture, really hit the main historic topics.
So is your thought that the tour would be maybe a combination of the 2 existing walking tours and then
Whatever you
information
have
from
on
the
that map,
surveys?
the map,
Right,
whatever's
right.
on
But
the
I
map.
mean, for each location, would the content be a combination of what's in the existing walking
Yes.
tours and then maybe more information from the survey?
Yes, we
Ah,
could do that.
okay.
Yeah. So there's that. Again, photos would be awesome. And then also if you do know owners of these structures of merit and they are interested and willing, I mean, we would probably need to get some sort of release if they wanted to share photos of the interior or unique architectural features, things like that. So, I mean, you could do, I mean, this is actually a very amazing tool for the Thompson House. You can do a virtual tour of the Thompson House, which would be ideal right now since nobody can go in. So it's just, I mean, so that's the update on Clio. That's where we're at. So if you're willing to help, or you have photos, or you know people and they want to provide that information, I'm getting very familiar with the platform, so I'm happy to, request corrections and additions.
That's
Just,
fantastic.
just for your information, Linda Criswell did one a long time ago. It's even before the internet, I think.
I have like 3 or 4 iterations of walking tours,
Okay.
the
All
historic.
right.
Yeah.
And then Sue Gray did those are the 2 that I know of.
Yeah. So there've been a few, and then there's like newspaper article from 96 or something like that. So
If we can break it into bite-sized pieces, I'm happy to help
Okay.
again. I
Right.
just don't have the bandwidth to do quite that big mountain, but Heather's a great photographer, and we can figure out how to get you the rest of the
Great.
photos and new
Okay.
photos.
And then Kelly, I know maybe next month might be taken up with other topics. But she did suggest before the weather gets inclement to maybe take one of the HPC meetings to actually do part of a walking tour, so that
Ooh, that'd be great.
the commission can really see what is out there and available for tours and locals, whoever's interested.
I love that you did all that homework on Clio, because it was something that someone else found for us, but
Right.
we never uncovered all the layers to see what all it would do.
Yeah, it's a pretty, it's a really handy platform. It's very helpful.
And figure out how to divide and conquer. You bet.
So that's one half of the coin. The other half is letting the public know that this exists. And I'm just curious how that outreach is going.
It's on the website. And that's pretty much, I'm not the town's PR person. So if there is a Preservation Commission member who knows Rotary or Chamber of Commerce and wants to reach out to them, that would be an appropriate task for the commission. So
I think I am actually giving the tour for the Sopris Lodge residents,
oh, nice.
giving part of it. I'm not quite sure. So I'll road test it a little bit
Great.
in person and see how it goes.
Mhm.
But I'm happy to help in any way. I'm not connected to any of the chamber or Rotary people that I know of. You're not.
Not really.
You never know. They're everywhere.
No, I rotated, but I rather. Okay, anything else with that? Thank you. Thank you, Kay.
Thank you, Kay.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And I think we really should do the little walking tour ourselves, because I'm really unfamiliar with
September.
the site.
Thinking do it by September.
Well, we have the 3 residential tours that are ready to go. So we could do part of one in September. Which,
Well, I'd like to suggest that we do it in September, cut this meeting in half or something, or just add on another hour, whatever to
Could be an earlier hour and volunteer.
Yeah, we could start this earlier and do it like the Parks and Rec does, and get the commission to often get Pepinos to give us sandwiches and then go around.
Or
it'll
beer
come out of your
works.
budget.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we got it in the
Your
budget.
personal paycheck.
Yeah, we'll take it out of my personal paycheck.
Jared can
Are we
pick it.
planning to do like 5:30 as the walking tour that day?
We'll be in touch. We want to touch base with Kelly and just make sure we
We do
know
have-
kind of what's on the agenda, but there could be a possibility at potentially the next two meetings doing a half-hour meeting and a half-hour walking tour or something like that. So
Cause
now that we say that, it'll probably rain
Monsoon.
biblically on those Thursdays, right?
probably should do it earlier so that we can actually see everything in the light, because I don't know how bad the lighting's gonna get in September.
Mhm. Good idea. But yeah, we'll talk with Kelly when she's back next week, and we'll be in touch about what those options are. And if it's a slightly earlier meeting, we'll pull you guys pretty quickly to see if it's something that you guys can make time in your schedules for.
Okay, next item on the agenda, the design guidelines discussion. So Jared?
Alrighty, I'll do my best Kelly impression on this one. So I was not at your guys' last meeting, but at your last meeting, there was some continual conversations about the design guidelines. And so we just want to make sure that was that the regulations we currently have on the books for OTR were kind of upfront. So we didn't kind of go through and include absolutely everything, such as I believe solar access is left out, but in your packet, starting on page 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We started including kind of all the processes as well as the dimensional standards and design guidelines for OTR. So I think some areas that would be good to look at, obviously, you guys are aware of on page 10, the accessory dwelling unit regulations for OTR. So that's page 10 and 11. And then pedestrian circulation on page 12 of the packet. And then we have supplemental standards for the Old Town Residential Zone District, starting on page 13 of the packet. And that goes through some building standards or guidelines, reducing apparent mass of facades, roof lines, stepping down in scale with the structure. And so we just wanted to, kind of make sure that you guys were aware of these to help inform the conversation about design guidelines. Are these the type of design regulations that you guys are hoping to see? Is there something that's missing? Topic wise, what we're hoping to kind of frame the conversation so that we can better understand what these design standards may or may not be, and then help move that conversation forward, whether it's re-advertising for future consultant work or just beefing up these standards in-house, leveraging our architectural expertise in this room.
Yeah, so I think a case in point was the house that is being built next to ours, and the whole process of what occurred with Pat Kiernan, the prior owner of that property. And the way the ordinances are currently written, we, the commission, we do not review any projects currently in Old Town Residential. I think one of our questions is, do we want to review those projects? What happened in that case was it was reviewed by staff. Staff issued a building permit that was contested by the neighborhoods. It went before the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment agreed that building permit should have never been issued. Janet, to her credit, our town planner, said that that project had been reviewed for its quantitative standards, but she failed to review it for its qualitative standards, that it didn't meet some of the language that is in the UDC. It wasn't reviewed under our Chapter 16 language at all. So I think our question is do we take on Old Town residential review, and what standards do we use to evaluate projects when we do? It was my suggestion that we do take that on for major projects, and in our design guidelines for the commercial core, it allows staff to review minor projects. They describe minor projects being 30% of the total building for remodel, and then anything larger than that would then be reviewed by the board here. So that's a little bit of the background. One of the areas that I think we should look at is with respect to the ADUs and loosening, making it, not loosening, but allowing more ADUs to be built. I think we want to allow for density increase that doesn't negatively impact the character of the neighborhoods, and that's through design guidelines. But right now, the size of lot restricts a lot of properties in Old Town from allowing an ADU. We could reduce those dimensional requirements. The other thing is, I think we really need to allow ADUs in Old Town to be either attached or detached structures. Right now, there's a limitation there, and then the other limiting factor is the impervious surface requirements. I bitched about the 650 square foot maximum for an ADU, which I thought was small, but it seems to work in our particular case.
There is language about parking spaces, and I think
Yeah.
the impermeable would sort of fall under that, maybe. I see, we were looking at these guidelines from 2000. And it seems like a lot of them are brought into the UDC. And I think probably there are some points that are missing. I couldn't tell you offhand, but it seems like ADUs are encouraged, and some of the basic standards that are in here have transferred. And it's a question of if we want to elaborate on more standards.
Yeah.
Some of those standards could be looked at from the HCC section.
Yeah. Comments?
We've been talking about this for quite some time,
Yeah.
like 3 years as a task
I'm
force.
getting old.
So no, but I agree. I do think that we need to re-examine a lot of those things that you talked about.
So, and I think we can
So-
do that in-house, Chair.
Well, so since I've started, I've heard this conversation, right? And with all due respect, Eric, I'm trying, I don't want to grow this conversation. I want to focus this conversation to see if we can't make movement on something, right? And so ADUs, I don't want to talk about. Process, whether this board or commission reviews Old Town residential or doesn't review Old Town residential, I don't want to talk about. We'll talk about those eventually, but I don't want to every time we bring up this design review, design guidelines conversation, I don't want to muddy the conversation with those tangential topics, right? I want to focus on design review guidelines, right? And so we put it out. We got a quote from somebody to do a public process to draft up design guidelines. That was starting point $25,000. And that was the purpose for applying for the grant that we didn't get, right? And so after we didn't receive the grant, this commission talked about what options exist, right? And there was a lot of discussion about in-house design guidelines. And so what Kelly worked on is saying, here's what we have today on the books that governs OTR. These are the regulations that we have. And so I think what we're really looking for is pointed feedback on where these design guidelines or these design standards or these architectural parameters, whatever that might be, where these are falling short and where this idea of design guidelines is going to help change the built form, right? And what we're going to see in the Old Town residential. And I say all that with, yes, ADUs need to be discussed. And then once we have some sort of design standards for the Old Town residential, we can talk about whether this body serves as a courtesy reviewer or not. We can talk about those other processes, but I want to focus on just the design standards and just the design guidelines. And so I don't know, is the information that we shared with you guys on page 13 and 14 of the packet, those kind of 6-12 kind of design standards, are those the types of qualitative design standards that you guys are looking for? Or are there other things that are missing from that, even if it's a global topic, right? Like, and I know, Jess, you said, well, it seems like there's some aspects of those 1999, 2000 design guidelines that were brought in here. And so, we're just throwing it back out to you guys saying, is this enough or do we need more? And if we need more, what are we missing? Is it materiality choices? Is it color choices? Is it roof form limitations? Is it, is it the impervious lot coverage is too pervasive, which allows for much bigger buildings, which isn't in the character of Old Town residential? Like, what are those design standards that we're missing? So hopefully that.
So my question is, what documents are we really looking at? Are we looking at the UDC and the design guidelines?
This is all directly from the UDC.
Yeah, so we also have the historic core design guidelines that are very developed, and their submission requirements associated with that.
Correct. And again, I don't want to focus on the process, right? We'll get to the process. We'll get to the submission requirements. We'll get to courtesy review, non-courtesy review. That's a different conversation, a part of this, but it's a different conversation. The design guidelines, yes, we have the historic preservation design guidelines, but they do not address Old Town residential. They address HCC.
Yeah.
And so this all started with, we need an additional chapter for Old Town residential. And so we took that, and now we're providing you with, here's in the UDC, the sections where we regulate design. Are these sufficient enough? or are we missing topics?
So would they get folded into the design? I mean, it's very confusing. Having two sets of documents, one the UDC and one the design guidelines. And so I think we need clarity on,
They could be folded in, but the UDC is going to have more teeth than the design guidelines.
What we need to do is make all the stuff that's in the OTR in the design guidelines here and just make it into a draft into the chapter 4. And we just need to go through and find out what we want to keep and what is going to be pertain to what we want to
I think
review. Is that what you want us to do, basically?
Sure. I mean,
That's what it sounds like. You're like, we need to figure out what we like from the UDC
Yeah.
and then fold it in as a chapter 4 and make a draft out of it and maybe have the diagram still in there and just kind of make it look like the other 3 chapters. So
we could do that if you think there's things that are missing
design
There
guidelines
could
from
be
the UDC.
is missing the chapter
Section
4,
about historic
but they're
structures.
folding in the UDC on
And
top of it. It's
new
just a
structures,
mess.
and we could look at this similar to Prospect, the development outside of Denver, which they have very distinct, what looks like the old neighborhood and then the new neighborhoods. The new neighborhoods incorporate a lot of the same things that we talk about here, entryways through porches, garages that are accessed off the alleys, where the new section has very sort of modern forms and, bold colors, and the older sections are what you would expect to see, clapboard or brick and ivy growing up and shingles and, we could sort of bring those two aspects into one document saying, if you have a historic structure, we would like you to maintain what remains historic, whether it be the porch or the siding or the windows or the whatever. But the new structures that come into town, we don't want them to look like the old buildings and disturb our perception of what is historical. We don't want to contaminate that.
they can still do
Yet we can
modern
still
stuff.
have, porches that are accessed or entries that are accessed through porticos and porches, the parking and little carriage structures in the back.
But massing has to be similar to all the other
Yeah,
buildings
the
surrounding.
massing, the distance to the street. One of the aspects was that to have the porches close to the street to promote interaction in the neighborhood. And the streets were very close to a square. And the squares, really sort of, it seemed brought the community together.
It was like a cottage court looking.
Like a East Coast court, I don't know.
Mhm. Like courtyard, like.
Yeah, well, in Aspen, there's Triangle Park where a lot of the historic buildings are oriented right around it and all the entries are facing that park.
I should have brought my missing.
What
middle book
neighborhood
with
in
me.
Denver was that again? Did you
Just
say?
outside of Denver, Prospect.
Prospect,
Prospect,
okay.
Newton?
Oh, Prospect.
Do you know it?
Yeah, Longmont.
Yeah, it's in.
My
been
ex-partner
there.
played a big role in its design.
It's even like
You're
talked
right.
about in the missing middle
Yeah.
book.
The what book?
Missing middle book.
So,
I just did a whole thing.
It's over there. You forgot it.
Jared, so have you got a suggested next step?
I think the feedback that Jess just gave is the type of feedback that we need.
Okay.
Here's a
And are you
place where
looking
they
for
do
that
it.
to go into the UDC or to go into the design guidelines or?
We're just looking for the design standards. Once we know what those are, we can figure out
Okay,
where it goes and what the process is and all that. But what we need from you all is if we were going to start reviewing residential structures in the Old Town residential, whether it's this commission or whether it's staff, what are those qualitative standards that we need to be measuring design against? And so I think a lot of that feedback that we just got, making sure that porches serve as primary entrances, garages aren't the focal point, garages to the greatest extent possible or access via an alley where alleys exist. Things like that are helpful, and then we can determine whether that's a UDC regulation or whether that's a design guideline regulation.
Okay. Fair enough. So maybe our commission should have a task force gathering and discuss specifics.
That
So
would
I
be
got a
helpful.
question for you.
Mhm.
Is this, the alterations that you're looking for, whatever to do, is it gonna be specifically for Old Town, or is this gonna be spread out throughout all the other zone districts?
Specifically for Old Town.
So then, if we're gonna have design guidelines or standards for only Old Town, in my opinion, it should be more or less leaning towards the brick and older styles as opposed to the newer, more modern things that are still architecturally feasible, but not in Old Town zone district. So I've been told many times you can't legislate style, but it sure sounds like that's what we are wanting to do here. I also don't want to live in Jetson, nor do I want to live in Flintstone. So I want to live in Old Town residential, and I don't, there's a lot of buildings that look like they just blew in from Chicago or New York somewhere that don't fit in an old town, small farming, ranching community.
But we are evolving. We are no longer,
Here we go again.
yeah,
I-
we're
we
no
could-
longer,
But Old Town is Old Town.
but
And
it's not Old West.
It is Old
It's not a
West. It is
stage
old.
setting.
it's Old Town and it is in the west.
It's not a stage setting for a Western.
And we had stagecoaches running through here not so long ago.
So there's some discussion to be had between members of the and the consensus opinion to be developed.
But I think what I heard everybody agree on is that we're gonna have a set of design standards that only apply to a specific property at the corner of Sopers and Eighth. I think there was consensus upon that, right?
Working on that.
Okay.
That's down the road, but not very far.
Okay. But yes, if there's a task force, if there's people who would like to be more involved, I can tell you Kelly would greatly appreciate that. See, her head's even nodding up there.
Can you reiterate the rules of a task force? Because I know it can only have so many people and it can only do. Tell us
Yeah,
the
but-
rules again.
So. Technically, if there's 3 or more of a commission that's constituting a meeting, it is allowed if you take notes and you report on what you discussed at that meeting at this publicly noticed meeting, or provide minutes or provide something that I can attach to the minutes of this meeting so that people are informed, and it's just part of the sunshine law that, decisions and conversations can't be undertaken outside of the public.
So ideally, 2 people or less.
Well, you said 3 or more, isn't it, a quorum, you can't have a quorum, Yeah, so really it'd be 4 or more.
Nope,
So
so it's
3 is not a quorum.
but it doesn't matter if it's a quorum or not, just public meetings and open meeting laws in Colorado state that 3 or more public officials can't meet to discuss official public business without it being a noticed public hearing to allow the public a chance to follow. And it's really intended to stop kind of the backroom deals, if you will, right? You go to the local saloon and you put your 6-shooter on the table and you're drinking whiskey and making all sorts of deals. And then you go tell the local sheriff what you decided.
Well, we've gotten rid of those things, so we are progressing. So I was under the impression that if there was no decisions made and what we discussed was brought to this forum, then that was okay.
Correct. And that's what Kay's saying. So as long as what was discussed is prepared, and that could be a memo, that could be minutes of what you guys discussed, as long as that is brought forth to this regularly scheduled noticed meeting,
Okay,
then that's okay. And so general rule of thumb is if you keep it to 2 or less, then you don't have to deal with all of that additional stuff, right? If it's just Eric and myself sitting here chatting, or Eric and Kim having a conversation about historic preservation in Carbondale, it's just a conversation between 2 citizens. I'm sorry, I picked on you twice, Eric.
okay.
Okay. Anything else? Anything from the gallery up there?
Is Eric still
Yep.
awake?
He's there.
No, nothing from me. You guys are saying everything, so.
Can you tell Eric's up there? Where is he?
Hi, John.
That guy waving?
Oh, okay. I'll take your word for it. Well, I make a motion, we adjourn. Oh, sorry.
We have our directives and we'll figure out what to do. So number 7 on our agenda is the staff report.
Yeah.
2 staff members, so those.
I'm trying to think of what, I don't think we have too much. Town center project. We anticipate the developers coming into town sometime at the end of this month to the beginning of next month to do kind of a public open house, get to know ya, present what they think they know to date and ask for more information. So once we have that date set, we'll let you guys know. I believe the initial date identified was Mountain Fair kickoff, which we thought might be not the best time to do that. There might be some distracted residents. So we might do it the following week, but we're trying to work with the art space to determine what that is. Let's see what else. The mobility plan is kicking off. We're gonna kind of take the ball from a lot of what age-friendly Carbondale has done to date on 133 and solicit some additional feedback on other areas of town and more on 133. So we are in the process of getting a new page to connect Carbondale website, Carbondale Connect Carbondale, to have an interactive commenting map. So I'll send you guys all a link to that after this meeting and then get the word out. tell your friends about it. So any place that you have a mobility challenge in town or a mobility success story that you want to share, they're looking for anything along those lines. This is the best sidewalk you've ever walked on, or there's no sidewalk, right? You know, for me personally, it's every day biking up and down 7th Street. I pass this big red house and I get harassed by, you know, one of the local residents. So, mobility challenge or opportunity, one of the two. But yeah, so that's kicking off. We will have in-person opportunities if that's your preference, but we at least wanted to get the online technology tool going as soon as possible for people who want to give feedback that way.
Is Connect Carbondale gonna be like the new page for like every single new plan, like all the transportation and all that
Yep.
stuff? So it's the main place to go to,
Yep.
okay.
So it's a rebranding of Carbondale Kaleidoscope
Okay.
because I still don't think anybody knows how to spell
No.
kaleidoscope.
Connect Carbondale is much easier.
So, so this project is MAP Carbondale, Mobility and Access Plan Carbondale. So,
But the website will be Connect Carbondale.
yep, so it'll be
Okay.
the same website and then you'll click on projects and it's all through the Bang the Table platform
yeah.
that the town has. And so it'll be just like the comp plan
Mhm.
and town center projects, but it will have its own sub page in that Connect Carbondale page. So we're trying to reinforce that with the community of here's our engagement platform and it's the same place every time that you want to virtually engage with
Put your
us.
surveys there.
Yep, totally. So I think that's about it. We'll get back to you guys on a potential in-person in-room / walking tour for the next meeting.
There is one, I'm sure everyone is aware, if you're not, the ash borer bug was found in Carbondale. It's a very serious issue. If you have an ash tree, it's basically a negative prognosis for the health of the tree. I think there is some potential for the next tree board meeting to be more of a public information meeting. So if you're interested, they meet the 3rd Thursday, so 2 weeks from tonight. But I haven't heard anything, but that was what was communicated to me.
And we are informing new developments to not install ash trees. We have enough other options to use that in their landscape plans. So we will be phasing that out until the emerald ash borer leaves town. And I don't know if that is a reality or not. Borer,
Or
B-O, yeah.
Yeah, if you've noticed, the trees in front of the post office are gone. And they're victims. And ones along along the corner of where the restaurant is, are also, if you notice, the tops start dying first. And those trees have been infected. So it's here, and RVR has planted, when they did their development, a significant number of ash trees. So they're in real trouble. So the plague of many plagues out there. Right. Okay, thank you, Kay and Jared, and fellow commissioners. Anything else? Going once, going twice. Okay. The meeting is adjourned. Right?
Good job.